She escaped a toxic love and entered a bar, not knowing the owner was a mafia boss. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Hey Kwai Lai Voi Nan Vat Chin. My name is Emily Carter, and the night I walked into that bar, I was running on instinct and borrowed courage. The rain had been coming down hard for nearly an hour, soaking through my jacket and blurring the streetlights into long, trembling lines. I had just left a life that felt too small to breathe in, a relationship that turned every quiet moment into something sharp and uncertain. I didn't have a plan beyond getting away, putting distance between myself and the place where my phone kept buzzing with messages I wasn't ready to read. My feet carried me down an unfamiliar block, past closed storefronts, and a flickering neon sign that hummed like it was tired of being alive. That was when I saw the bar. No loud music spilling onto the sidewalk, no line out front, just a heavy wooden door and a warm glow behind frosted glass. It felt safe in the way quiet places sometimes do, like they're keeping a secret just for you. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, shaking rain from my hair, breathing in the smell of polished wood and citrus cleaner. The room wasn't crowded, just a handful of people spread out, their voices low, their movements unhurried. I took a seat at the bar, choosing the stool closest to the end, the kind of spot you pick when you don't want to be noticed. My hands were still trembling as I wrapped them around the edge of the counter, grounding myself in the cool surface. I told myself I was here for one drink, just enough time to slow my thoughts and let my heartbeat settle back into something normal. That was when I felt it, the subtle shift in the room, like a change in air pressure before a storm. I looked up and saw him behind the bar, tall, composed, moving with a calm confidence that didn't ask for attention but seemed to command it anyway. His name, I would later learn, was Vincent Romano, but in that moment, he was just the owner, wiping down a glass with practiced ease, dark eyes lifting to meet mine for half a second longer than necessary. There was no smile, no obvious curiosity, just a steady awareness that made me sit up straighter without knowing why. He set the glass down, asked what I'd like in a voice that was low and even, and somehow that simple question made me feel seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I ordered something light, something familiar, and listened to the soft clink of ice as he poured, unaware that this quiet decision, this ordinary choice on a rainy night, was about to pull me into a world where nothing was accidental and every step forward would matter. I stayed on that bar stool longer than I planned, tracing the faint ring of condensation my glass left behind as if it could anchor me to the moment. The drink warmed my chest, not enough to dull my thoughts, just enough to slow them. Around me, the bar moved in a quiet rhythm, low conversations, the soft scrape of chairs, the occasional laugh that rose and fell without demanding attention. It felt like a place that existed outside of time, where people came to forget and were allowed to do so without explanation. Vincent moved behind the bar with the kind of ease that came from ownership, not just of the space, but of the silence itself. When he spoke to the other patrons, they listened. When he nodded, they seemed to understand. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was projecting meaning onto a stranger because my nerves were still raw, because my body had not yet learned that I was safe. Still, every time he glanced my way, my shoulders tightened, not in fear, but in awareness. He asked if the drink was all right, and I nodded, managing a quiet thank you. His eyes lingered for a second, reading something in my face I had not meant to show, then he moved on without comment. I appreciated that more than I could explain. I had spent too long with someone who treated questions like weapons, who needed answers to feel powerful. Here, the absence of pressure felt like kindness. I checked my phone under the bar, the screen lighting up with missed calls and messages stacked too close together. I turned it face down again, my pulse jumping, then settling when nothing else happened. No door slammed open. No voice called my name. The rain continued its steady rhythm against the windows, blurring the world outside, until the bar felt like the only place that existed. A man a few stools down tried to strike up a conversation, his tone friendly but curious, and I answered politely, briefly, keeping my responses light. Vincent noticed. I could tell by the way his posture shifted, subtle and controlled, like he was recalibrating the room. When the man leaned a little too close, Vincent cleared his throat from behind the bar, not loud, not sharp, just enough to draw attention. The man straightened immediately, muttered something about needing the restroom, and walked away. No confrontation, no scene, just a boundary enforced without effort. I exhaled without realizing I had been holding my breath. Vincent set a small bowl of pretzels in front of me, an unspoken gesture that felt deliberate. "On the house," he said, his voice calm, his expression unreadable. I wanted to ask him why he ran a place like this, why it felt different from every other bar I had stepped into on nights when I needed to disappear, but I did not. I sensed that questions were currency here, and I was not ready to spend mine. Instead, I finished my drink slowly, listening, observing, letting the tension drain from my muscles inch by inch. I did not know who Vincent Romano really was. I did not know what kind of man could command a room without raising his voice or making a threat. All I knew was that for the first time in a long while, I was sitting somewhere that felt steady, and I had no idea that steadiness came with rules I had not yet learned. I noticed the shift before anything actually happened, the way the room seemed to lean inward, like the bar itself was paying attention. It was subtle, almost polite, but once I felt it, I could not ignore it. Vincent had stepped away from the bar and was speaking quietly with a man near the back, someone I had not seen come in. The man nodded too quickly, his posture stiff, like he was receiving instructions rather than having a conversation. When Vincent returned, he did not go behind the bar right away. Instead, he leaned against the counter a few feet from me, close enough that I could smell clean soap and something sharper beneath it, not unpleasant, just controlled. He asked if I was from around here. I shook my head, told him I was just passing through, which was not a lie so much as an incomplete truth. He accepted it without pushing, but his eyes stayed on mine long enough that I felt exposed anyway. There was something unsettling about being seen so clearly by someone who was not asking for anything in return. A group of men entered the bar then, their presence louder than the others, not in volume, but in confidence. They took a table near the front, their laughter too sharp, their glances too assessing. I felt my spine straighten automatically, a familiar instinct I wished I had left behind with my old life. One of them looked at me a second too long, then whispered something to the man beside him. Vincent noticed. He always noticed. He did not rush over. He did not raise his voice. He simply met the man's gaze from across the room and held it. The laughter faded. The man looked away first. I watched the exchange with a mix of relief and confusion. It was not dominance the way I understood it. There was no aggression, no display, just an unspoken understanding that certain lines were not crossed here. Vincent returned to my side and placed my check on the bar, sliding it toward me with 2 fingers. It was already paid. I told him there must be a mistake. He shook his head once. "No mistake," he said. "Call it hospitality." I hesitated, then thanked him, unsure why my voice sounded smaller than it had a moment ago. As I reached for my wallet anyway, my phone buzzed against my palm. My stomach dropped. I did not look at the screen, but Vincent's gaze flicked to my hand, then back to my face. "Who are you hiding from?" "Emily," he asked softly, saying my name like he had known it all along. My breath caught. I did not remember telling him. I asked how he knew, and he shrugged, the faintest curve at the corner of his mouth. "People tell me more than they think," he said. I should have been alarmed. I should have left right then. Instead, I stayed, caught between fear and a strange sense of safety I did not yet trust. He did not ask me to explain. He did not offer solutions. He only said that if I needed a quiet place for a while, the bar would be open late, and that no one here would bother me unless he allowed it. The words settled over me slowly, heavy with meaning I did not yet understand. I nodded, unsure what I was agreeing to, knowing only that the man standing beside me was not just a bar owner, and that stepping into his world, even unknowingly, had already changed the shape of my night. I did not leave when Vincent stepped away again, though every instinct told me I should. Instead, I watched the bar through a new lens, noticing details I had missed before. The way the staff moved with quiet efficiency, never rushing, never questioning. The way certain patrons glanced toward Vincent before making even small decisions, like ordering another drink or settling their checks. It was not fear exactly. It was respect sharpened by something deeper. When Vincent returned, he gestured toward a small door near the end of the bar, partially hidden behind a shelf of bottles. It led to a quieter room, he said, if I wanted some air without stepping back into the rain. I hesitated, then nodded, reminding myself that I had walked into this place on my own terms. The room beyond was dimmer, furnished simply, with a single table and a low lamp casting a warm circle of light. The noise of the bar softened to a distant murmur, like waves heard from shore. I sat, folding my hands together to keep them from shaking. Vincent did not sit right away. He leaned against the opposite wall, arms crossed loosely, giving me space without leaving. "You are safe here, Emily," he said, not as a promise, but as a statement of fact. I asked how he could be so sure. He met my eyes steadily. "Because nothing happens in this place without my knowledge," he replied. The words should have frightened me. Instead, they settled something restless inside my chest. I told him I was not looking for trouble, that I just needed one quiet night to think. He nodded once, as if he had already known. We sat in silence for a moment, the kind that did not demand to be filled. I noticed a faint scar near his jaw, pale against his skin, the only imperfection in an otherwise controlled presence. It made him seem more real, more human. I asked him why he noticed things other people missed. He considered the question, then said that paying attention was cheaper than fixing mistakes later. I did not know what kind of mistakes he meant, and I did not ask. My phone buzzed again, persistent, insistent. I finally looked at the screen, my throat tightening at the familiar name. Vincent did not glance away this time. "You do not owe anyone access to you," he said quietly. The words landed with unexpected force. I had spent so long explaining myself, justifying my choices, shrinking to keep the peace. Hearing someone state the opposite so plainly made my eyes sting. I turned the phone off and set it on the table, face down. Vincent's gaze softened, just a fraction. "That took courage," he said. I almost laughed at that, because it felt like anything but courage. It felt like survival. When I stood to leave the room, Vincent opened the door first, checking the bar beyond before stepping aside to let me pass. The gesture was protective without being possessive, and that distinction mattered more than I could articulate. As I returned to my seat to gather my things, I realized I no longer felt like a guest passing through. I felt like someone who had been allowed to exist in a space without apology. I did not know who Vincent Romano truly was, or what kind of world he controlled outside these walls. All I knew was that the quiet choices he made carried weight, and that by staying, even for one more minute, I was stepping closer to a truth I was not yet ready to face. I realized how late it was only when the bar began to thin out, the rhythm of the room shifting as people settled their tabs and drifted back into the night. The rain had eased to a mist, streaking the windows instead of pounding them, and the city outside looked calmer, almost forgiving. I gathered my jacket, suddenly aware of how tired I was, the kind of exhaustion that came from holding yourself together for too long. Vincent noticed immediately. He asked if I had somewhere safe to go. The question was simple, but it landed heavily. I hesitated, then said I was still figuring that out. He did not press. Instead, he told me to wait a moment and spoke quietly to one of the staff. When he returned, he placed a small card on the bar in front of me, not sliding it, just setting it down like an option. It had the bar's address and a number written neatly on the back. "If you need help tonight," he said, "use this." No explanation. No conditions. I nodded, slipping the card into my pocket, unsure why my throat felt tight. As I stepped toward the door, it opened from the outside, and my body reacted before my mind caught up. The man who walked in did not raise his voice or make a scene, but his presence filled the space with a familiar tension I had hoped to leave behind. He scanned the room, his gaze sharp and searching, and then his eyes found me. My heart stuttered. Vincent moved instantly, placing himself just slightly in front of me, close enough that I could see the steady rise and fall of his shoulders. "You are not welcome here tonight," Vincent said calmly, as if he were reminding someone of house rules. The man tried to laugh it off, saying he just wanted to talk, that he was worried. Vincent did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply repeated himself, slower this time, his tone unwavering. "This is not the place." The air felt charged, every sound amplified, but nothing exploded. The man hesitated, glanced around, and seemed to reassess the room. Whatever he saw made him step back. He muttered something under his breath and left, the door closing softly behind him. I realized my hands were shaking. Vincent turned to me then, his expression composed but intent. "You do not have to explain anything to me," he said, "but you should not walk home alone tonight." I opened my mouth to argue, to insist I could handle it, then closed it again. I was tired of handling things. Vincent offered to have someone walk me a few blocks, just far enough that I could breathe. I agreed, grateful without wanting to admit how much. As I waited near the door, I noticed how the staff moved closer, quietly, as if forming an invisible barrier until it was time for me to leave. Outside, the air was cool and damp, the streets glistening under streetlights. I glanced back once, meeting Vincent's gaze through the window. He gave a single nod, not a farewell, but an acknowledgement. Walking away, I felt the strange pull of the place I was leaving behind, the sense that I had crossed an unseen line simply by being noticed and protected without being claimed. I did not yet understand what kind of man Vincent Romano was, or why his quiet authority carried so much weight. I only knew that the night had shifted something inside me, and that whatever came next, I would not forget the bar where I had been allowed to stand my ground and walk away with my dignity intact. Sleep did not come easily that night. Even after I reached the small motel room a few blocks away, the kind with thin curtains and a buzzing ice machine outside, I lay on the bed fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the way Vincent had stepped between me and the door without hesitation, without asking permission. It was not the kind of gesture meant to impress. It was efficient, practiced, like something he had done many times before. That realization stayed with me long after the city sounds faded. By morning, my phone was quiet. No new messages. No missed calls. The silence felt fragile, like it could shatter if I moved too quickly. I checked out early, the clerk barely looking up, and walked back toward the bar with a sense of inevitability I did not try to fight. I told myself I was only returning to thank him properly, to give back the card if nothing else. The bar looked different in daylight, softer around the edges, less mysterious, but no less deliberate. Vincent was there already, sleeves rolled up, overseeing deliveries with the same calm focus I had seen the night before. When he noticed me, he did not look surprised. He nodded once, as if my return had been expected. "You made it through the night," he said, not a question. I told him I had. He gestured toward the counter, set a cup of coffee in front of me without asking how I took it. It was exactly the way I liked it. That unsettled me more than anything else. We spoke quietly while the bar prepared to open, about nothing important, about the weather clearing, about how the city felt different when you stopped running from it. I asked him if he ever slept. He smiled then, just slightly, and said that some responsibilities did not take breaks. I did not know what he meant, but I could feel the truth of it. As the morning wore on, I noticed people stopping by not just to drink, but to talk, to ask questions, to seek approval in small, coded ways. Vincent listened, responded, resolved things with a few words. No raised voices. No drama. Just decisions. I began to understand that the bar was not his power. It was a doorway to it. When I mentioned I needed to find something more permanent, a place to stay, maybe work until I figured out my next move, Vincent did not offer sympathy. He offered solutions. There was a small apartment above one of his other businesses, vacant for now, quiet and secure. No obligation, he said, as if sensing my hesitation. Just somewhere you can think clearly. I should have refused. Every lesson I had learned told me not to accept help that came so easily. Instead, I asked what he wanted in return. Vincent met my gaze steadily. "Peace," he said. "For you." The simplicity of the answer left me unbalanced. By the time I left the bar again, keys warm in my palm, I knew I had crossed another invisible line. Vincent Romano had not asked me to stay. He had not claimed anything from me. He had simply rearranged the world around me so that leaving felt harder than staying. And as I walked toward a future that suddenly felt less frightening and far more complicated, I understood that his protection was not a favor. It was a declaration, quiet and irrevocable, that I was now seen, and that being seen came with consequences I was only beginning to grasp. The apartment Vincent offered was quiet in a way I was not used to, the kind of quiet that did not buzz with anxiety or unfinished arguments. It sat above a closed tailor shop, its windows overlooking a narrow street where delivery trucks came and went with predictable routine. For the first time in weeks, I slept through the night. Not deeply, not without dreams, but without jolting awake at every sound. Over the next few days, a rhythm formed. I helped at the bar during slower hours, wiping down counters, restocking shelves, doing small tasks that kept my hands busy and my mind steady. Vincent never asked me to do more than I offered. He never hovered. But he was always aware, stepping in when a situation shifted, guiding the flow of people with quiet authority. I began to see the edges of the world he controlled, not through force, but through influence. People deferred to him, trusted him with problems they did not bring to anyone else. One afternoon, a woman came in early, eyes red, voice tight. Vincent listened, nodded, made a call, and within minutes her shoulders relaxed, her breathing slowing as if a weight had been lifted. She thanked him like he had saved her life. Watching from the side, I felt a chill of understanding. This was not just a bar. It was a center of gravity. The realization unsettled me. I asked Vincent that evening why people listened to him the way they did. He paused, considering his answer carefully. Because I keep my word, he said. Because I do not promise what I cannot deliver. There was more behind the words, layers he was not offering, and I did not push. Still, the unease grew. Safety that came from one person alone felt precarious. I had learned that lesson the hard way. When I told Vincent I did not want to rely on him too much, that I needed to be careful, he listened without interruption. When I finished, he nodded once. That is wise, he said. Dependency creates weakness. I did not expect him to agree so easily. He surprised me again by encouraging me to look for work outside his businesses, to build something that belonged solely to me. I began to understand that his protection was not about possession. It was about boundaries, about order. One evening, as we closed up together, I overheard two men speaking in low tones near the door, their conversation stopping abruptly. When Vincent approached, one of them apologized quickly, promising to handle a situation. Vincent corrected him calmly, specifying how it should be done, not with threats, but with precision. The men left looking relieved and uneasy all at once. That night, alone in the apartment, I finally allowed myself to name what I had been circling. Vincent Romano was not just a businessman. He was a man whose reach extended far beyond the walls I saw, and he had chosen to extend that reach toward me. The weight of that choice pressed on my chest, heavy and undeniable. I realized that staying meant accepting the truth of who he was, not the softened version he showed me, but the whole of it. And leaving would mean walking away from a protection that had already reshaped my life. Standing by the window, watching the city lights blink on one by one, I understood that the real danger was not in Vincent's world. It was in pretending I could step into it without being changed. The question was no longer whether I trusted him. It was whether I trusted myself to decide what came next. I thought I understood the balance I was walking, but balance is an illusion when the ground beneath you keeps shifting. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that had begun to feel almost normal. I was shelving bottles behind the bar when the air changed, that subtle tightening I had learned to recognize. Vincent was on the phone, his voice low, controlled, but there was an edge beneath it I had not heard before. When he ended the call, he did not look at me right away. He finished what he was doing, wiped his hands carefully, then told me we needed to talk somewhere private. In the back room, the door closed softly behind us. Vincent did not pace. He did not raise his voice. He told me that someone from my past had been asking questions again, testing boundaries, seeing what they could get away with. He did not name him. He did not need to. My chest tightened anyway. I told Vincent I did not want this to become his problem. His gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with something close to disappointment. You became my concern the moment you walked into my space, and I chose not to turn you away. He said. The words were calm, but they carried weight. I realized then that my presence had altered more than my own life. It had touched his world too. I asked him what that meant for me. He did not answer immediately. Instead, he told me what he could offer and what he could not. He could keep people at a distance. He could make sure I was not cornered or pressured, but he could not pretend the risks did not exist. Staying near him meant accepting a level of attention that would never fully fade. The honesty unsettled me more than false reassurance ever could. I felt the old instinct rise, the urge to leave before things grew complicated, before I owed anyone anything. I told him I needed time to think, that I did not want to trade one kind of control for another. Vincent nodded. I will not stop you if you choose to go, he said. But do not confuse protection with ownership. I have never tried to cage you. That night, alone in the apartment, I packed my bag twice, then unpacked it again. I weighed every choice, every fear, every quiet moment of safety I had found since meeting him. I realized that the danger I was running from had not disappeared. It had only been held at bay. And the question was no longer whether Vincent was dangerous. It was whether I was willing to keep running from every place that offered me shelter simply because it came with power attached. The next morning, I returned to the bar before opening. Vincent was already there, reviewing paperwork, his focus absolute. I told him I was not ready to leave. Not yet. But I needed to stand on my own within his world, not behind him. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. That is the only way this works, he said. For the first time, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet, not because someone else was holding it for me, but because I had chosen where to stand. I did not know what the future held or how much of Vincent Romano's world I would have to face. I only knew that I was done being defined by what I ran from. And whatever came next, I would meet it with my eyes open. I did not notice the change all at once, only in small moments that added up to something permanent. Mornings began to feel lighter. I started taking longer walks through the neighborhood, learning which streets felt like mine and which ones did not. At the bar, I moved with more confidence, greeting familiar faces, setting boundaries without apology. Vincent watched all of it without comment, stepping in only when necessary, trusting me to find my footing. One evening, as we closed together, the city humming outside, he asked me if I regretted staying. The question caught me off guard. I thought about the motel room, the nights spent waiting for a phone to buzz, the version of myself that measured safety by how small she could make her world. No, I said finally. I do not regret it. He nodded, as if confirming something for himself. We stood in silence for a moment, the kind that had once unsettled me and now felt earned. I realized then that whatever connection existed between us was built on choice, not fear. A few days later, I found a job interview across town, nothing glamorous, but honest work that belonged to me. Vincent did not interfere. He simply asked when I would be back and reminded me to eat. The simplicity of it made me smile. On my way home that night, I paused outside the bar, watching the warm light spill onto the sidewalk, remembering the woman who had walked in soaked and desperate weeks ago. She had been looking for an exit. I was no longer running. Inside, Vincent was speaking with someone near the door, his posture relaxed, his presence steady. When he noticed me, his gaze held mine, and in that look was a quiet understanding that neither of us needed to explain. Later, as we locked up, I told him I was thinking about getting my own place soon, somewhere close, but mine. He considered it, then said that independence was not distance, and that staying by choice mattered more than proximity. The words settled deep, reshaping how I understood everything that had happened between us. Standing on the sidewalk, keys in my hand, I hesitated. Part of me expected him to say something final, something claiming or dramatic. Instead, he simply said that the door would always be open if I needed it, and that he trusted me to decide when to walk through it. As I turned to leave, he added one last thing, his voice low and certain. You did not stumble into my world by accident, Emily. You walked in because you were ready to stop surviving and start choosing. I paused, the city stretching out before me, unfamiliar but no longer frightening. For the first time, I understood that safety did not come from hiding or being shielded. It came from standing where you belonged, fully aware of the risks and still choosing to stay. I walked away from the bar that night with my head high, not because I was protected, but because I had learned how to protect myself. And somewhere behind me, I knew Vincent Romano was watching, not as a keeper or a savior, but as someone who respected the strength it took to walk your own path and the courage it took to stop running.